Hi guys, thanks for tuning in to another episode of Nuggets News. Tonight's episode is going to be all about the current tax treatment of cryptocurrencies within Australia and how best we can work within the regulatory framework. As if we want to see cryptocurrency really thrive and become part of the greater economy, okay, we want to try and work within the government framework if we can. And by no means am I going to tell you guys what to do with throughout this video, but at least I want you guys to be aware of these rules and regulations so that you can choose to work within them if you can. And I don't want to see any of you guys get stung with tax evasion and end up in jail or anything like that, as there are only two things in life that are certain, and that's death and taxes. Okay, so for a lot of you new guys, this is probably your first investing experience, and you might not be aware about how capital gains and capital losses work. Okay, whether you're a share trader or an investor for tax purposes, and I'm going to walk you through how all that works in tonight's video. Okay, so now recently we had some good news from um, by the Australian government. They're going to stop the double taxation of Bitcoin. So previous to now, if you were buying Bitcoin, it incurred GST and it was treated as a good. So if you bought Bitcoin, you were meant to be paying 10% GST as you do on all goods and services within Australia. And they're going to remove that, what they call double taxation, and start treating Bitcoin like money. So think of this as if you were to walk into a bank with your Aussie dollars in hand and you're going on holidays, you need to buy some euros or some US dollars. You'd, in that instance, you're just exchanging one currency for another. And that's the category that Bitcoin is now going to fall into, okay, which is really positive news as we want to see Australia become real innovators in cryptocurrency and technology and a bit of a hub throughout Asia Pacific. And we need these sort of rules to be in place if we want to see it thrive. So now, on the flip side, we are seeing some pushback from governments, and recently the IRS, which is sort of the US equivalent of the ATO, the Australian Tax Office, they actually subpoenaed Coinbase for all the information about their users. Okay, and Coinbase are currently fighting this, but I mean, don't get me started about my libertarian views and government overreach and whatnot, but I mean, this stuff is coming. And I think I read the stat that there was only a few hundred people declared cryptocurrency on their tax returns in the US, yet Coinbase has got thousands and thousands of users. So governments are aware that this stuff is going on behind the scenes, and they're going to want their piece of the pie as we move forward. So just really important stuff to be aware of as I'm sure the ATO are looking into this just as much, okay, as we've seen Bitcoin in the news recently. So now the next point I just want to touch on quickly is the difference between being a trader and an investor. And for tax purposes, there are some advantages to being a trader. And I have run a share trading business in the past, but I just want to let you guys know that it's very difficult to qualify as a share trader for tax purposes. And you've basically got to prove that you're doing it almost full time. You've got a strategic trading plan that's repeatable. You're going to be making high volume of trades with appropriate amounts of capital, keeping records of everything, um, evidence of your subscriptions to literature and all that sort of stuff. And I just want to skip past this almost straight away because 99% of you guys are not going to be share traders. You're going to be investors. So even if you're doing a bit of trading on Bitfinex or Poloniex, okay, going between cryptocurrencies, which I'll touch on at one stage, but you guys are not going to be share traders for tax purposes. It's going to be investors. So just keep that in mind as we move forward. Now, next thing I want to talk about is capital gains tax and capital losses as well. So anytime you buy something, shares or cryptocurrency, if it goes up in price and you sell, you make a profit, that is what's known as a capital gain. So the flip side of that, if you buy something, it goes down in price and you sell it, that's a capital loss. And I'll get into that in a bit more detail in a couple of minutes, but anytime you make a gain, you have to pay tax on that. And I just want to use round numbers for the example in this video. But if you buy $1,000 worth of Bitcoin, goes up in price, and you sell that for $2,000, you've made $1,000 profit. And that $1,000 has to be added on to your annual income. Okay, so let's say you make $50,000 and you make $1,000 from Bitcoin in profits. Your annual income now becomes $51,000 for that year if you bought and sold it in less than 12 months. So in this example, you'd be paying $325 um, out of that $1,000 profit in tax. Now, this is where it changes if you're a long term buy and holder, and this is why a lot of guys should just be looking to buy their cryptocurrencies and hold it. Because if you hold any profit for over 12 months, okay, so that same trade, you buy $1,000 worth, it goes to 2,000. But if you do that over a 12-month period, you get a 50% discount. So you only be paying half of that $325. So that's the category that I think most of you guys should be thinking about and falling into, as it works out best for tax purposes in the long run. Okay, so the next thing I want to talk about is losses. So on the flip side of that, if you bought some small coin, you bought $1,000 worth, it dropped down by 50% in price, and you sold it for $500. That's actually a capital loss. But this is where it gets different. Capital losses do not take down your annual taxable income by $500. But what you can do is take those off the capital gains you make. So I know this is starting to get a little bit complicated, but if you made $1,000 from Bitcoin and you lost $500 on another coin, that means that your annual profits are only $500, and that's in the less than 12-month example. So if we were to use the over 12-month buy and hold example in the first instance, if we get the 50% discount on our capital gains, so we bought $1,000 of Bitcoin, it goes to $2,000 over a year, so longer than 12 months. We then get that 50% discount, so that capital gain is $500. But if we made a $500 loss, they cancel each other out, and you get to sort of, it sounds a bit weird, but you get to keep that whole $500 gain because it's offset by that $500 loss. But like I said, that loss will not come off your income if you haven't made gains. So if you've just made all losing trades, unfortunately, you can't sort of take that off your annual income. But that's just a rough guide of. I hope that was clear for you and you guys, just to sort of get your head around how this stuff roughly works for tax purposes with gains and losses. And moving forward, this is where it starts to get interesting, and something I was a little bit surprised by. So there are exceptions to this, and this is non cryptocurrency related. This is just general um, capital gains tax guidelines, and personal use items that are acquired for less than $10,000 are an exception. And as we dig a bit deeper and we get into the cryptocurrency specific guidelines, this is where the part that really interested me: using Bitcoin to pay for personal transactions. Generally, there will be no income tax or GST implications if you are not a business or carrying on an enterprise and you simply pay for goods or services in Bitcoin. For example, acquiring personal goods or services over the internet using Bitcoin. Where you use Bitcoin to purchase goods or services for personal use or consumption, any capital gain or loss from the disposal of the Bitcoin will be disregarded as a personal use asset, provided the cost of the Bitcoin is $10,000 or less. So let's go back to that same example. If we've made $1,000 profit, if we actually spend that Bitcoin on a website, um, and I'll get into the best ways to do that later, but if we spend that on a good or service, the capital gains is actually disregarded, which is really interesting. So I guess the things that you guys should be looking to avoid is, if you're going to make a large profit and then sell that into an exchange and go straight back into your bank account, those large transactions are going to get flagged. And I've heard different numbers being thrown around, whether it's $10,000 or $5,000, whether that gets flagged by the bank or flagged by the tax office, okay? But I think that's probably one of the worst ways to go at the moment to lock in profits. And I think the more we look into this, the best way to use your Bitcoin and use those profits is to buy goods and services on the internet, which is really interesting, I think, as we move forward. So another thing I just want to touch on here before we move on is going between cryptocurrencies. So if you go from Bitcoin to Ethereum, Ethereum to Litecoin, okay, in the US, that's treated as a taxable event. And if you've got profits at that time, the taxable event gets locked in at that point when you move from one to another, okay? But in Australia, there's no guidelines around that at the moment. And my friends at the tax office who I spoke to said, as this is a grey area, the current answer is no. So that is not a taxable event, which again is really good news for cryptocurrency um, traders within Australia. And finally, I just want to wrap this up by talking about Living Room Satoshi, which a website that a few of you guys might know of already, but they will let you pay any bill in Australia that accepts BPay with multiple cryptocurrencies now, which is, like I said, if we're going to be able to use our profits to pay for goods and services, this is currently for me the best way to go about it, and use my Bitcoin and my Ethereum and my Litecoin, my biggest sort of holdings, to pay off my bills and to buy goods and services at any company in Australia that has a BPay biller code. So really cool stuff. I've recently partnered with Living Room of Satoshi as well. I'll put a link in the description of this video below. Okay, I'll be running a bit of a competition as I really want to help these guys grow their business, and I'll be drawing out 5 winners. The winner's going to get 1 Ethereum. I'll tier the rewards for the next 4 winners, but I really want to encourage you guys to use the link below in the description of the video. Use the Living Room of Satoshi. Okay, pay your bills. These guys won best startup business in Australia in 2015, and I think this is just an awesome business model. And now we've got the tax treatment of cryptocurrencies to suit them even more. This is becoming really favorable environment for them. Okay, so this is what I'll be doing moving forward. Okay, I want to work within that tax framework. I want to use my profits to my advantage. If I do make large sales, I'm obviously going to be paying tax, but for me, the majority of my holdings are still long-term to buy and hold. Okay, so I hope you guys found this presentation interesting. Keep the discussion going below on the page if you've got any queries or comments, anything I've missed. Okay, but hopefully that gives you the most up-to-date information, the current taxation treatment of cryptocurrencies within Australia. So thanks, guys. Please like, share, subscribe to this video, and keep up the good work. Cheers.